Hey guys, this is Gary, the CEO of SalesDialers.com. Today we have Eric Fribush of eSupplemental.com, and he's going to share some really good insight for an agent getting started in the industry. So Eric, thank you for being on the webinar today. And if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Gary. So about 18 years ago this week, I started in insurance. Prior to insurance, I started the website for the largest music retailer in the country. So marketing was kind of my thing. My job with them was to get people to buy CDs through our stores and online, and it developed into interviewing almost every major music artist out there that had an album come out between 1988 and 2000. Did that for a few years and decided I wanted to go out on my own and started my own website for unknown musicians. And my now wife was actually recruited out of college for Aflac. And she started marketing insurance to groups, and I kind of got pulled into it. And my first ever meeting was with a large university, and I was like, this is great. You know, it was simply just an email to the president, and it resulted in a meeting. And I just started doing that. I did the whole Aflac thing for a couple of years. But while I was doing that, I said, well, wait a minute. I was more of an internet guy. And I said, well, how can we go direct to the consumer? I'm knocking on doors, I'm calling on businesses, hopefully getting a group and going and enrolling the group. I said, well, I don't want to travel. I'd rather sit in my office and do the same thing. So how can I get to people? So I started marketing cancer insurance, and I got licensed in almost every state, and I just sold cancer insurance. I wanted to stay with that niche. And I started marketing online. Back then, the internet was still kind of new. There weren't a lot of people doing it. The insurance companies weren't doing it. So I was generating anywhere from 100 to 200 new leads a day. So I was like, this is great. I can sit in my office, make calls, do sales over the phone, and not have to drive around. I'm in the Maryland area, so I had Maryland, D.C., more Northern Virginia. So I was finding myself going to groups in Northern Virginia a lot, where you're sitting in the car for 2-3 hours for a half-hour meeting. And if you landed the meeting, great, it was worth the time. But there was a lot of groups that just didn't land. So and as the internet business took off, which was eSupplemental.com, I focused my efforts strictly on that and generating leads for that, and really starting to, as I had the website up, agents started coming to me. How can we work with you? How do you generate leads? Do you give us leads? And that kind of just from probably 2003 to now, it's been strictly over the phone. Every once in a while there's a group here and there, but really all over the phone. And it wasn't until probably about 5 or 6 years ago that I really started getting into Medicare. I was really focused on cancer and critical illness insurance, short and long-term disability, but more niche products. We do special things with people who work in healthcare and in the federal government. It wasn't the stuff that everybody else was really selling. It was more the niche opportunities. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I said, well, wait a minute, why am I not doing Medicare? Because when I first started, I was getting Medicare leads, and I had no idea what to do with them. And I really wish that I got into Medicare a lot sooner than I did. But now I'm in Medicare full force and working with a lot of agents, not only in-house in our organization, but all across the country. We still do the other products, but Medicare has become a big part of our organization.
Cool. So that's really neat. So tell me, Eric, we know you're a Sales Dialers client. Tell me what a typical day of prospecting looks like to you. So, when do you call? How often do you call? Just set up for a new agent getting started. What does that prospecting day, when you're gonna prospect, what does that look like for that day?
So in the Medicare market and dealing with seniors, typically 64 and up, I feel that you have to get on the dialer, in the morning, probably 9 o'clock a.m., whatever, if you're Eastern, Central, Pacific time. Now, if you're on the East Coast, what we found that is we'll call in the morning and we'll prospect, but at a certain time it starts to die off a little bit. So you really need to be in multiple states. Now you can just focus on one or two states in your area, or that you're in, and just really hammer it during those hours. But you have to be on the phone during those hours. You can't, you talk to somebody and they want an email sent out, because not every sale is a one-call close, and you have to realize that. You have to be able to, if you're not getting the one-call close, don't be a pushy salesman, okay? Build that relationship with that person. So it might close on the second or even the third or fourth. Sometimes it might take 12 calls, okay? But basically, if you're just calling in your state, and let's say you're Eastern Standard Time, call in the morning, up probably until 12 o'clock, and then call after probably 3:30, 4 o'clock, and into the evening. I don't know how many people that are listening to this call in the evenings, but there's a lot of people that we talk to that are still working. Even though they're going into Medicare, they're still working. And we're finding more and more of that, and they just can't talk during the day. So you have to be available to call them in the evening. This is not a 9-to-5 job. It's your own business, and you have to treat it like that. And you have to be willing to call the person when they're available. So you have to make yourself accessible on a time that works for them, and then hopefully for you too. But so what we do is we call in the morning. During the day, when it gets to our slower time, so we'll try and call East Coast, and then we'll move to maybe a Central time, and then a Pacific time, out west. Most of our business is probably in the Eastern and Central time zones in those states. But there's a lot of business out west too, that if you're willing to call at night, it's during the day for them there. So again, if you're an East Coast agent. So we make our calls, and what I practice and preach is during the slow time that's when you send out your email, or even make some follow-up calls, or do the paperwork, aspect of the business. Because the less people you talk to, the less sales you're going to get. And you have to get into a more disciplined nature of making those calls, using that dialer at certain times of the day, because once you jump off of that, your sales are going to be affected a month, 2 months later, when you just don't have any sales, everything's dried up. You can look back at, especially in sales dollars, when you look at your numbers and run your reports and see each day how many calls you made, run it for the week, run it for the month. And if your numbers start to go lower and lower, your sales are going to be affected down the road.
So it's really consistency, and it's a numbers game. Is that right? I mean, you have to get those numbers, and you have to be consistent, right?
Yeah, I've always, I was always told that when I was taught insurance. I learned a lot of stuff on my own, but one thing that I was always told, it was a numbers game. And that's something that I always tell people, especially new agents coming on board. But when you look at the numbers for each person, the call numbers, and you look at it versus sales, and you look at it, the numbers add up. There are, out of 100 dials, you're going to generate a certain amount of leads per those 100 dials. And the numbers don't lie. I mean, it's been consistent like that for years, at least for people who make calls consistently.
Interesting. So, talk to us about what a script would look like for Medicare. Now, I know you use our sister product, Sales Data List. You pull turning 65s, right? Tell us what a normal script would look like. Can you run that down on how an agent might be able to just, maybe the script that you use, that your most popular script. Can you share that with some of the people on the webinar?
Yeah, so there's really a few basics with that. One, you want to introduce yourself. You want to say, or a lot of people want to know where you're calling from. So if you have a website name or a business name, you probably should use that, because they're going to ask for it at some point in the conversation. Oh, where did you say you were calling from again?
Right.
So if you're calling for just one insurance company, I guess you could use that insurance company's name. Now, we deal with almost every insurance carrier out there, at least the reputable ones. So we don't really use an insurance company's name when we're calling. We use our own organization's name. But when we call, we are more coming off as an educational resource, at least in the beginning. Yes, the ultimate goal is to get a sale for every agent. But unless you can make sure that they're educated on what exactly they're getting or understand how Medicare works, you might get a sale, but your chargebacks are going to be higher because they just don't understand what they're getting. Some people just buy because they're told to buy it. But most people, they want to understand first and foremost. But the other thing is, when you're calling somebody as a cold call, you have to earn their trust. So you have to give them as much information about you. Like for me, I will give somebody my license number because at some point you have to ask them for payment information. And there's a lot of people out there that just do not want to give it. So you have to make them feel comfortable enough that you are not a scammer. You are a licensed representative. Give them your license number, because if you got nothing to hide, you should give the license number, even give the state insurance commissioner's number to the office, and say, look, if something goes wrong, call them, because I know that I'm going to tell people the right thing. And it all comes with me being educated on Medicare first and foremost. So in the script, we first want to ask them, are they taking Medicare for the first time, or have they already been in Medicare? Because there's a lot of people who are on a disability. They've already been in Medicare. They might already have an Advantage plan, and they might be happy with their Advantage plan and want to keep it. But as a turning 65 person, they have an opportunity to come off of that Advantage plan and go into a supplement. So first and foremost, we ask them, are they going to be taking Medicare for the first time? We do ask them in that original, or when we first call them, have you received your Medicare card yet? It's more for conversation. It does help us so that when we ask for their Medicare claim number, that they have it. But it does tell us those couple of things. Have you received your Medicare card yet? Are you taking Medicare for the first time? It kind of helps us go in the right direction to the call. We also then ask, do you have any questions on how your Medicare works? Some people do, some people don't. Some people just think they're experts already and just don't want to hear anything about it. But at least we're able to, answer any questions. And some people will say, well, are you calling from Social Security? Are you calling from Medicare? No, we are not calling from Medicare. We're a licensed representative. We represent most of the Medicare supplement carriers. And we're here to answer any questions that you might have on your Medicare and how a supplement will work along with your Medicare, so that you're essentially 100% covered. Now, there's a small deductible with Medicare Part B, which is currently $183. But in the beginning of the call with the script, it's more just introducing yourself and seeing how, or asking them if they have questions on Medicare, and then kind of going from there based on the responses that they give.
So you're making yourself a resource to that person. And then when you establish yourself as credible and a resource, that sale probably comes a lot easier, doesn't it?
I feel that it does. See, with me personally, and I still do Medicare sales. I've kind of moved more towards helping agents out than doing my own sales. But I still do sales, and there's a lot of people that just they want or actually need that one call closed because they need money now. That's the hard part with the insurance business. If you're just getting into insurance, the first 3 to 6 months, even up to a year, sometimes a little bit longer, is the hardest part because you have to build that pipeline. That's why agents coming into the business for the first time, they want leads. They want people ready to talk to you. It doesn't work that way. Everybody who has lasted in the insurance business started off, in most cases, I'm not going to say everybody, but I know in my case where I had bigger ways to generate my own leads. And there's many different ways to do that. I mean, you got the cold call, which we do a lot of. You have social media. You can do blogs. There's so many different ways if you think outside of the box to generate a lead. I mean, once you're in the business long enough, you'll start getting referrals. I get lots of referrals every day from people that probably family members or friends of people that I've already enrolled. But the hardest part is actually generating that lead. And what I found is if you're not pushy and you're willing to get the sale on the second or the third or later down the road, then you can build that relationship with that person. I'm not saying just mail out something to everybody you talk to, but certainly email. If they can give you an email, use your CRM and put a note in and send them an email, and then keep following up with people. Because what I have found is the agents that don't make it in this business, a big part of it is because they didn't follow up. If somebody's willing to give you an email, and you can communicate with them. And I'm not saying just email them, call them as well, use that dialer. And, you have to just keep asking for the sale. Always ask for the sale on the first call. Worst case is somebody's going to say, no, I'm not ready, or no, I'm not interested. If they say, no, I'm not ready, can you send me something? Sure. What's your email address? I don't have an email address. Okay, well then we'll mail them a simple brochure in a regular envelope. Doesn't have to be a big blank application packet, because if you send a blank application packet, probably 80 to 90% of those aren't coming back.
Yes.
It's a matter of just working with that person. I mean, we're talking to people that, if you call them 4 months ahead of time, typically we call people about 2 to 3 months before their 65th, the first of their birth month. We find that people have already signed up. And so there are organizations out there calling 6 months, a year before the person can even sign up for coverage.
Wow.
And most Medicare supplement carriers will let you write an application on a person turning 65 6 months prior to their effective date. So, but the issue with that is, you're going to have rate fluctuations. They're going to get bombarded with calls. And then there's ways to handle that with the client, to let them know and just give them a heads up. You're going to be getting a lot of calls. You're going to lose some here and there because somebody else just got to them, or a local agent or a family member's now selling. And they're going to cancel the policy you wrote them and go with somebody else. But if you can always give them, I never really want to lose out to rate. And that's why we represent most carriers, is we always want to show them the best rate. And of course, with a reputable carrier. There's some carriers that I just will not deal with. I don't care if they have the best rate. And it's usually a carrier the person's never even heard of. So it's usually not even an issue. But I never want to lose a sale because of rate. And we're typically going to always tell them, well, at least what we've heard, we've given them more information than they've heard from other people. And we're going to let them know that, let's say they sign up 4 months before their effective date. Well, between now and those 4 months or their effective date, and even 6 months after that, they're still in their open enrollment period. So if we see a rate from a reputable company come in cheaper, we're going to bring it to their attention and at least give them the option to switch. Okay, let them make that choice, but we're going to at least always look out for their best interest and make sure. And that's how you build up your pipeline, and that's how you build up referrals down the road. It's not easy in the beginning. As a new agent, it's not easy. But as the longer that you last in this business, and give it your every effort, and every time, if this is a full-time business for you, every minute that you can spend prospecting, do it. Because if you don't, it will affect you. But I promise, the longer you stay into, especially when residuals start to hit, you will see that it was well worth it. So you have to put the time in. If you're not going to put the time in, and I tell people, you have to have some money in the bank when you start this business, because if you can't get, unless you're working with somebody who's giving you a draw to get you through the first several months, you're going to have other stuff going on. You have bills to pay, and it's mentally, it's going to affect you making sales. And you're going to get really pushy with sales, and it's just going to wind up in chargebacks.
That's some great info. That was so detailed, and it really blew me away, the information that you just shared. I have a question. Now, in any sales process, you have objections. And my staff and I brainstormed some questions to ask you, Eric, before this webinar. And we want to know, what is the number one objection that you get as an agent? What will that be? And then how do you overcome that? We feel that that's a great question for an agent starting out, is knowing what that objection is going to be, or maybe, the top 2 objections, and how to overcome that objection. Can you share some information on that?
Well, I mean, there's objections before you're even starting to take an application. I want to research it a little bit more. Well, that's what we do for you. I'm going to send you an email. I'll even send it in the mail if I have to, if you don't have email. That's going to show every company out there. The plans are standardized by the government. So from a benefit standpoint, they're all the same. Some companies are going to give you some value-add benefits, but from a core benefit standpoint, and it being standardized by the government, there's no difference. Okay, you want to go with a reputable company. I'm going to give you every top reputable company. If you hear one that you like, or maybe you heard that a friend or family member went with, maybe you stick with that because you've heard good things about them. But we're going to show you every possible rate that is out there that you might qualify for, and do that research for you. I mean, that's one of them. What's another objection? People who say, I'm not ready yet. Okay, that's fine. When do you think you might make a decision on this? And they'll give you a date, and that just kind of allows us to put in when we're going to follow up with them. But you have to follow up, because I have seen agents who don't follow up, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, I remember, I got to call that person. And it's because they didn't use the CRM. And the person said, well, I already signed up for, X company. And that was the company that they recommended to them in the first place. And it was because they didn't follow up. We get objections. You take an application, you kind of have to let people know there's a lot of Medicare supplement carriers that will take the first premium out now when you do the application. Most of them do. And if you don't tell the person up front that, you're going to start to have to face some objections when you get to the payment part of the application. But one big objection is why do I have to give you my payment information? Well, how are you going to pay for this? A lot of times they don't have an answer for that. Well, I don't like to give my payment information out over the phone. Well, that's fine. I can certainly understand that. Let me give you my license number. Let me give you the phone number to the state insurance commissioner, because my license is my livelihood. That's how I feed my family. Okay, but I'm also not trying to go to jail or get fined over somebody's Medicare supplement policy. It's just not worth it to me. I actually rather you go somewhere else, because I'm not here to scam anybody. One thing about me is I want to make sure you're educated. I want to be with you throughout the years. This is not I help you get set up and you never hear from me again. And that usually calms people's fears about giving their payment information. And worst case is, if they don't want to give it to you over the phone, say, no problem, we can get the full application filled out. And a lot of times we can use DocuSign and just email it to them. Some people rather just type it in. Some people rather just have it and hold it in their hands through the mail. I really try and get away from mailing, but sometimes you just have to mail a packet. And if you have all of the information except for payment and maybe even their social security number, that's another big objection. I don't want to give you my social security number.
Right.
Unfortunately, the insurance companies require it. So whether somebody sends you a paper application or comes to your house, whatever, you have to write that information down on something. So somebody's going to see it. If you fill out a paper application and that application gets submitted to the insurance company, the person at the insurance company is seeing it. So it's going to be seen. So that is a really big objection that we have to try and get by. And it's key to getting the sale, because without it, we don't have the sale because the insurance companies require it. So that's kind of some ways we do that. Some people say, well, I'm still working. Okay, well, you're still working, but who's your group health insurance through? How much do you pay for it? What's the deductible? What's the co-insurance? Okay, most people don't know. So I tell people, well, let's do this. How about you call your HR and get that information? Let's schedule a call for later in the week or even next week. And what we'll do is we'll compare what you're paying for your health insurance now and what it's going to cost you to be in Medicare. Because I'll be the first person to tell you to stay in your health plan if it makes better sense. But a lot of times it actually makes more sense to come out of your group health plan and take Medicare. I'm able to tell people a story because my mother recently went in Medicare. I think it was almost 4 years now, October. 1 week after she turned 65 and had that supplement, she was diagnosed with kidney cancer. She had a kidney taken out. She was in the hospital almost a week, lots of follow-up treatments. By having that supplement, she had no bills. So one thing that you have to try and do with people, and that's a unique situation to me, you have to try and illustrate things to people on how the coverage is actually going to work. And, because you might hit a chord with some people. They might have had a spouse that was going through cancer or had a heart attack or something. And the great thing about open enrollment is none of that matters. Okay, you might have somebody that's been on disability. They have all these medical issues, but now they're turning 65. Well, none of those medical issues matter now, and they have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get into their supplement. So you have to educate yourself on how Medicare works, how it works in various situations, and listen to the people. Okay, because if you don't listen and you just talk and you just sell, you have an uphill battle. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but you're going to have a big uphill battle instead of listening to people's situations and hearing what they're saying. But the other thing is, while you're listening to them, you can ask them certain questions. Now, your data might have date of birth and it usually has address and information. But there are certain things that you can ask while you're talking to them, so that when you're ready to do the application, you've already asked them the information. You really don't even have to ask them it again, because you have a notepad. What's your date of birth? Just to verify that that's the month that they can. And this is even before they said, I want to do an application. Because when I do an application, it's a quick process. And I've heard agents who've done applications who take a long time because, one, they're just not comfortable with the application. Over time, as you do more and more applications, you get really comfortable with it. But the quicker you can, get through that application and make the applicant see that, this was an easy process, because most seniors going into Medicare think it's this, awful process, confusing process that they have to go through, when honestly it's not. And they can understand that when Medicare pays an expense, the supplement will pick up the difference. You're going to be responsible for the first $183. This is a Plan G, of course. I think most agents should be showing Plan G and Plan N. Plan F's, I think it's just agents more or less that want more premium and essentially want more commission. But I think if you're putting somebody in an F right now, it's going to come back to bite you at some point.
Wow, that's great info. We talk about in the industry, we're a dialer CRM solution company, but, you talked about the follow-up. The money really is in the follow-up, isn't it? I mean, the money is in the follow-up, and a lot of people blame the leads. We have a saying that it's not the leads, it's you. And the reason it's you is because you're not following up, whether it's a phone call or an email or whatever. But isn't that really true that you find? I mean, it is in the follow-up. The money is in the follow-up, because most of your sales aren't going to happen on that first call. Would you say that's correct?
It's absolutely correct, and that's why you need a somewhat of a CRM. It doesn't have to be the greatest CRM in the world, but you need a CRM, because I tell people when they're getting into this business and using the sales dialer that you want to try and get about at least 7 to 10 new prospects in your CRM that you've talked to and have shown someone interest a day, and let's say 5 days a week. So now you have, let's just say at the end of the week, you have 50 prospects. You now have to follow up with those 50 prospects. Well, now you have another week. Well, now you're at 100 prospects, and some are going to drop off as you go into the weeks after you originally talked to them. But you have to find a way to not only follow up with the people you've talked to, but also still call new people. And that's why you need a really good CRM in addition to the dialer. The dialer makes it absolutely wonderful to get a hold of people. I think you guys have the best dialer around. And essentially, without the follow-up, I mean, those leads are your gold. I mean, I have a brother and runs a very successful business, and I used to generate so many leads, through the search engines and things for other products like the disability and the cancer insurance. And I would not follow up with these people, because I always thought these policies almost sold themselves. I would send them a quote via email, but I wasn't picking up the phone, and because I had so many of them. And until I started bringing on more agents that could handle those leads, and it wasn't just me, I waited for people to call me. And I had some products that people would. I mean, I didn't have to call. But most products, you have to call that person. People are especially if you generate an internet lead, but I mean, on a cold call lead, you've put in that time to generate that lead. It's hard enough to get people on the phone willing to talk. Okay, if they're willing to give you that information and willing to entertain a second call, that is gold to you. If you're in this business to make money or feed your family or whatever, if you're just doing this business just to buy some time and have something to do, then okay, just sit there and wait for the person to call you back. It's most likely not going to happen. But I've had people that, I'm competing with a lot of other agents that have probably outside of my organization that are doing the same exact thing. And I've had people tell me, at the end after they bought, I went with you because you were persistent. Okay. But I also do it to where I'm not bothering them. I'm not calling every single day after I've talked to them the first time. Okay. I set a follow-up after I talked to them and sent the initial email. It's probably about 4 days later on average that I will give them a call, send them another email. Did you get the information? I just want to know if you got the information.
Right.
And do you have any questions? And that's going to dictate, is this going to be another follow-up after that, or do we have the sale? Okay. The people are just ready to go. And it's part of this business is luck. It's catching somebody on just the right day. And, but most of it is the follow-up. And I see that a typical sale is going to be anywhere from 1 to 2 months from the time you originally talked to them.
Wow.
That's been the average. And for people who just need that sale right away, it's difficult in the beginning. But if you can build that pipeline day in and day out, get your 7 to 10 contacts a day or 50 a week. If you're doing 5 days a week, I mean, we're typically Monday through Saturday. And constantly follow up with those people, use the systems. I mean, there's so many from a CRM standpoint. Look, you guys have a really good CRM. We actually also use a free version of HubSpot in addition to yours that we there's a way within Sales Dialer that you can push the data right into HubSpot. And it works great for us. The two systems work great together. And find your CRM that you like. You just need a CRM that you can put notes in. You can email the person. You can easily pull it up anywhere, whether it's a phone or. Did I lose you?
Yeah, Eric. Sorry, go ahead. You were talking about the CRM. I don't know what happened, but let's continue.
Yeah, so use your CRM to do your follow-ups, because what it'll also do, I'm more of an analytical guy too. I like to crunch the numbers. You can go back and see on average of how long a sale's taking from beginning to close. How many touches did you need? If you're not using a CRM, you won't be able to see that. And you won't be able to improve on what you're doing so that maybe you're lowering the time for the sales cycle from start to close. But you have to use your CRM along with your dialer and keep calling the people until they absolutely say, no, I'm not interested. Don't call me anymore. Call them, especially if you've talked to them before and you've sent them information. Until they tell you no, then keep calling them. Because eventually they'll tell you no. Eventually, look, if somebody just absolutely doesn't answer the phone, in 3 follow-ups that I do or agents do, I say, look, put an agent or a follow-up for a little bit farther down the road. It might work, it might not. At some point, you got to just close it out and move on from that person if they're just not being responsive. But they may still have your email, and when they're ready, they're going to call you. Hopefully.
Right. So, and that's great info, Eric. Just an agent is going to be so happy to have this resource for this info today. If you were, now you're a veteran in the insurance industry and Medicare sales, what is the one piece of advice that you would give that you wish, if you would have known this in the beginning of your career in Medicare, what is the one piece of advice that you wish you would have known that you could share for another agent?
Well, and for me, I didn't focus on Medicare in the beginning, and I regret it. I really do. Things would be a lot different now if I had been doing Medicare for 18 years. But I can't worry about that now. But getting into the business, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, no worries. What is the one piece of advice that you could give a new agent starting out that you wish you would have known starting out in Medicare?
It's not easy, and there's a lot of people doing it, but don't look at that as the market. A lot of agents that I talk to, they give up too soon. They say, well, the person said they've already been called 5 times today, or they feel like the market is saturated with agents calling. That's not true. There's plenty of people. And while we focus on people turning 65, you have the whole market of people over 65 who just need a new plan because it's less money. Getting into this business, while it's not easy, I think you do need to have some money in the bank because it is not instant. Okay. And that makes it difficult. Let's say you have a spouse that doesn't work, or you're the sole breadwinner of the family, or you have children. If you can't survive, a few months in the beginning, I really tell people maybe you want to look at something else that's going to give you a guaranteed income, because sales, especially insurance sales, being commission, it's not guaranteed, and you have to work, as hard as you can. Now, you might be with an agency or a downline, but you have to treat this as your own business. Yes, use them for their knowledge. Like me, I will work with agents. I will show them everything that I know. I don't care if it winds up being competition down the road for me. Okay, because there's plenty out there for everyone to go after. But you have to put in the time. You have to think outside the box, and don't just take what somebody else is giving to you. So if you have somebody, helping you with the dial or helping you with data, okay, do other things in addition to that. Use that to its full potential, but also do other things, especially if you have an insurance license, okay? Don't just do what your upline or your FMO is telling you. Look for other things in addition to that, okay? Branch out into other products. Cross-sell. Look, we talk about the follow-up. A lot of agents just never, and this comes back to having a CRM, is 3 months down the road, you sold somebody, and then you follow up with them 3 months down the road. Well, now you might get that dental or vision plan or a cancer plan, okay, or ask for the referral, or now their spouse might be ready to sign up. Unless you call them and check in and build these relationships with people, you're just not going to survive in this business, and you should do something else. It's just,
So what you're saying is that once you sell them that product, there's an opportunity to sell them other products down the road, right? So is that what you're saying? You can sell them as long as you stay in contact with them, right?
And that's why you have to stay in contact with them.
Yeah.
Some people might buy a Medicare supplement, a prescription plan, a dental vision. Those are kind of like the 3 main products, and they might buy that all in one. I found that, some people, you got to watch and make sure from an income standpoint that you're not, putting too much on their plate, because then they're just going to cancel it all. I can't afford it. And then they might just move to a Medicare Advantage plan or something because it's all included in one, but they really just don't understand it, but they did it because of the price. But yeah, once you have a client, if you want to stay in this business, and if you want to stay, I know there's lots of people that have been doing this far longer than I've been doing this, but doing this 18 years, I would not be in this business still if I wasn't constantly going back to clients, asking for referrals, saying, hey, I have a new plan that you might want to look at. Because once you've built that relationship with that client or a husband and wife, and you're honest with them, you have to be honest with people. Don't tell people something just to get the sale. It's just not worth it. And people who do that are doing it because they need money now. And this is not the business to be in, especially with your license. It's going to come back to hurt you later. And just be upfront with people, but be knowledgeable as well. Don't tell them something just because you think it's the right answer. Somebody asks a question and you don't know the answer, let me get that information for you. The easiest thing with Medicare is somebody says, well, does Medicare cover this? We hear that a lot. The first thing I do is go to Google, I type in Medicare and that condition. And usually the first page is a page on Medicare.gov that will list how that condition is covered with Medicare. Okay. And look, if Medicare doesn't cover it, the supplement doesn't cover it. I hear a lot of people say, well, this other agent told me that my prescriptions were covered under my supplement. Well, no, that's not the case, because Medicare doesn't cover prescriptions. So your supplement doesn't cover prescriptions. Your supplement is only paying when Medicare pays. So if Medicare doesn't cover prescriptions, you mean to tell me that I have to also get a prescription plan? That's an objection too, that you have to, because there's agents out there that are just telling them something to get that quick sale.
Yeah.
And it hurts, other agents who are knowledgeable. So one thing as an agent getting into this business is read all you can. Go online. There's plenty of YouTube videos. There's plenty of resources out there. Work with whoever contracted you. Make sure they're going to help you and work with you, and help answer questions. But as time goes by, I still hear things from people that I still have to look up, even doing it this long. But get them the right information, even if you have to get back to them, in 20 minutes or a half hour later that day, because you need to ask your upline or you need to call the insurance company. They will appreciate that. And it all comes down to just being honest with people, and it will pay off for you down the road with more sales.
Great info, Eric, and I love the Google thing. So that's a great little tip for agents. We have one last question, and before we wrap up the webinar, how has Sales Dialers helped you for Medicare sales? How has it helped you get better at what you do?
So one, it allows us to call more people, of course. We've played around with different settings on how many people to call at a time, and I've always before I really jumped into Medicare and rolled out Medicare in our organization, we really never cold called. We strictly generated leads online, and it was all a warm lead essentially, because the person knew why we were calling. And in Medicare, we had to learn a lot of things. And I looked for different dialers, because I had talked to people, other organizations that would simply, and some of the organizations might not have dealt with insurance or Medicare, but similar type of sales, they were just picking up a phone and manually dialing. And I'm like, well, that, how that's not going to work. We need to talk to as many people as we can. So when we started using Sales Dialers and saw the ease and not having to have a per minute charge, because you can easily connect right in through VoIP or right through the internet, and saw the ease of it, it was a no-brainer for us. When you compare it to other dialers that are out there, I think the price point is perfect, especially for agents getting into this business. It's not an exorbitant amount to pay, and it does its purpose. It gets people on the phone for you. It's reliable. And you guys have a wonderful technical support team that if something ever does happen, or they're there and they get stuff fixed right away. And it's been it's been great working with Sales Dialers, and I've referred it to a lot of people. We have many dollars in here internally, and you guys have been great in adding new features and things that really work for the agent. And I would encourage anybody listening to this, especially who are getting into Medicare sales, try the dialer out, because once you start using it and see how easy it is to use, and a lot of the features are that you can get on it are really going to help your business. And of course, there's other dialers out there. Ones that I've seen, they're a lot more money. They don't really do much more. I mean, Sales Dialer does the core of what you need to do to be successful in this business. And I would recommend it to anybody to at least try it out, because I think once you start using it, you'll really like it.
Cool. Well, thank you for that, Eric. That's great info. And the Medicare Sales, we have a lot of agents that use our solution for Medicare Sales. And what we want to do as a company is we want to help those agents be successful. And so that's what you did today. You've just shared a ton of information for agents looking at the video today. And you've shared a ton of helpful tips and best practices and objections and when to call, who to call, what to call. So we just want to say thank you for your time today, for sharing this and giving back to that agent starting out, because that's what it's all about, giving back to those people getting started just like you. So Eric, thank you so much for being on today's webinar, and we really appreciate you everything. We appreciate the partnership with you and your team. So just thank you so much for being on the webinar today.
Well, Gary, I really appreciate you guys, and for anybody listening out there, I've been one, especially over this 18 years. I've kind of stayed low key in this business. I haven't really put myself out there. But I've worked with a lot of agents across the country over this 18 years, and more just because they've come through my website looking for help, a lot of things that we've talked about. So if there are any agents that are looking to get into this business or get that day-to-day, or somebody that they can reach out to with questions, contact me, come through our website. We're esupplemental.com. I'm just Eric, ERIC at esupplemental.com. Doing this so long, I'm at a point where I really want to help people. I genuinely do. And, even if it's a question on sales dollars, I'm almost an expert now on most things with sales dollars. And, but I really appreciate you having me on here and letting me, discuss Medicare. And, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Eric, thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye-bye.